The waitress leaned over my shoulder as though she were collecting an empty plate. Her hand brushed against my jacket. Then she whispered 4 words that turned my blood cold. "Do not drink that wine." I kept smiling. Across the table, my daughter-in-law, Sandra, was watching me with an expression so warm and affectionate that anyone else would have called it love. I knew better. Her green eyes remained fixed on the glass in my hand. She was waiting for me to take a sip. My son Marcus sat beside her, completely unaware that the woman he trusted more than anyone might be trying to murder his father. I slowly lowered the wine. Sandra's smile tightened. "Is something wrong, Alan?" she asked. "Not at all." I reached for my water, deliberately knocking my folded napkin onto the floor. When I bent to retrieve it, I quietly moved my wine glass to the empty place beside me and shifted the untouched spare glass into its position. No one drank from either one. But Sandra noticed. For one brief second, absolute panic crossed her face. Then she reached across the table and switched them back. She tried to make the movement appear casual. It was not casual. It was the movement of someone protecting a secret. That was when I knew. The mysterious sickness that had been draining the life from me for 6 months was not age. It was not stress. It was not some rare condition the doctors had failed to understand. Someone had been making me sick. And the person doing it was sitting across from me, wearing my late wife's pearl earrings and smiling like a devoted daughter. My name is Alan Holloway. I was 66 years old when a 25-year-old waitress saved my life. Until that night, I believed I had learned how to recognize dishonesty. I had spent 40 years in construction. I started with one pickup truck, a borrowed concrete mixer, and enough debt to keep me awake until sunrise. By the time I retired from daily operations, Holloway Construction employed more than 200 people and handled commercial projects across 3 states. I had dealt with contractors who padded invoices, suppliers who delivered inferior materials, employees who smiled while stealing, investors who could lie without blinking. I thought I knew what greed looked like. But greed is easiest to recognize when it arrives carrying a briefcase. It is much harder to see when it enters your home carrying homemade soup. The story began 4 nights earlier at my own dining table. I had invited Marcus and Sandra to dinner because I wanted to discuss my will. It was not supposed to be dramatic. I had suffered several frightening health episodes. There were mornings when I woke so dizzy that I had to hold the wall. There were afternoons when familiar names disappeared from my memory. Nausea arrived without warning. My heartbeats sometimes became slow and irregular. Other times, it raced hard enough to make me wonder whether I was about to die. The doctors ran test after test. They blamed stress. They blamed age. They adjusted medications and ordered me to rest. Nothing explained why the symptoms came and went. I would feel almost normal for several days. Then Sandra would visit. She would bring soup, vitamins, herbal tea, or some new health tonic she had discovered. Within hours, the nausea would return. The confusion would thicken. My hands would shake. For months, I considered her attention an act of kindness. She called to remind me to take my pills. She reorganized my medicine cabinet. She brought food when I felt weak. She even kept a spare key to my house. Marcus said she treated me as though I were her own father. I wanted to believe that. My wife, Eleanor, had died 5 years earlier. The emptiness she left behind had never completely closed. When Sandra entered our family, part of me hoped she might bring some warmth back into the house. At first, she seemed to. She remembered birthdays. She laughed at my old stories. She asked about Eleanor. She called me Dad before the wedding was even over. Looking back, I understand that she was not becoming part of my family. She was studying it. That Tuesday evening, the chandelier above my mahogany dining table cast a soft golden light across the room. Eleanor and I had purchased that table during our 10th year of marriage. It had survived holiday dinners, spilled drinks, birthday cakes, arguments, reconciliations, and 30 years of ordinary life. Now Marcus sat to my right, twisting his napkin between his fingers. He was 32. A good man in most ways. Intelligent, loyal, and sometimes too eager to believe the best about the people he loved. Before marrying Sandra, he visited me every Sunday. We talked about sports, business, and whatever was troubling him. After the wedding, every visit included her. Our conversations became shorter, more careful. It was as though an invisible person sat between us, listening for anything that might threaten the life she was constructing. Sandra sat at the opposite end of the table. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup looked untouched despite an afternoon spent preparing dinner. She had chosen the menu. She selected the wine. She decided where everyone would sit. I had called the family meeting, yet she had quietly taken control of every detail. "Dad, we really don't need to discuss your will tonight," Marcus said. He cut into his steak without looking at me. "You're going to be fine." "I hope so." "You're healthy?" I almost laughed. Healthy people don't forget where they parked their cars. That happened once. It has happened 3 times. Sandra leaned forward. Her expression was filled with concern. "Oh, Alan, don't talk as though you're dying." Her voice was soft, but her eyes brightened when she said the word dying. "The doctors said it could be stress. They also said they don't know. You've been through so much since Eleanor passed." She reached for my hand. I allowed her to touch it. Her fingers were cool and carefully manicured. "You should focus on getting better," she continued. "Marcus and I can handle the difficult decisions. That is why we are discussing the will." Her fingers tightened around mine. "I intend to make several significant changes." Sandra's smile widened. "What kind of changes?" The eagerness in her voice appeared and disappeared so quickly that Marcus did not notice. I did. "I have been considering how the company, the properties, and my investments should be divided." Marcus shifted in his chair. "Dad, this can wait." "No," Sandra said quickly. She turned toward him. "I think it's wonderful that Alan wants to be open with us." Then she looked back at me. "We support whatever you decide." People who expect nothing usually do not smile that much during conversations about inheritance. People who truly support whatever you decide do not grip their wine glasses until their knuckles turn white. I excused myself and walked toward the bathroom. The hallway walls were covered with family photographs. Eleanor holding Marcus as a newborn. Marcus at his high school graduation. The 3 of us standing outside the first Holloway construction office. As I passed the dining room doorway, I heard Sandra whispering urgently. "What if he changed it already?" Marcus answered too softly for me to understand. Sandra hissed another sentence. "He cannot do this without talking to us." I continued down the hallway. When I returned, she was standing beside my chair. "Let me refresh your wine." "I haven't finished this one." "You barely touched it." Before I could object, she lifted the bottle and filled my glass. Her hand trembled. Just slightly. Enough for the wine to strike the rim. "Thank you," I said. I lifted the glass but did not drink. Sandra watched the movement. "You've been very attentive during these health problems," I said. "Of course. The soups, the teas, the vitamins. You need someone taking care of you. It's strange, though." Her smile remained in place. "What is?" "I sometimes feel worse after your visits." The color disappeared beneath her makeup. Marcus looked at me. "Dad, what are you implying?" "Nothing." I kept my tone light. "I'm only saying the symptoms are unpredictable." Sandra set the bottle down. Her fingers remained around its neck. "You should be careful about suggesting things you don't understand." There was an edge beneath the sweetness. A warning. Then she smiled again. "I only want you to feel better." The rest of dinner became a performance. Sandra encouraged me to eat. She offered more wine. She insisted on serving the chocolate cake herself. She cut my slice first. She added extra whipped cream. When our eyes met, I saw something behind hers that I could not explain away. Not affection. Not worry. Calculation. I took one small bite. Marcus and Sandra both relaxed. The movement was almost invisible. But I noticed. That night, after they left, I stood alone in my living room. Eleanor's photograph rested above the fireplace. I looked at her face. "What am I missing?" I whispered. The house did not answer. But every instinct I had developed during 40 years in business told me the same thing. Something was wrong. And the person pretending to care for me might be the reason I was sick. For the next 3 days, I replayed every visit Sandra had made. Every bowl of soup. Every vitamin. Every cup of tea. The pattern became impossible to ignore. My worst attacks occurred after consuming something she provided. I stopped taking the supplements. I poured her remaining tea into the sink. Within 48 hours, the fog in my head began lifting. My stomach settled. My heartbeat felt steadier. That improvement frightened me more than the illness. It suggested the sickness had an outside source. I needed evidence. Accusing my son's wife without proof would destroy my relationship with Marcus. Sandra had spent 3 years making herself indispensable to him. If I confronted her, she would cry. She would claim I was confused. Marcus would defend her. I would become the paranoid old man attacking the woman who had cared for me. So I did what I had learned to do on construction sites whenever I suspected a hidden structural problem. I stopped looking at the finished walls. I started examining what was underneath them. On Friday, I invited Marcus and Sandra to dinner at Romano's. It was a family-owned Italian restaurant downtown. Eleanor and I had celebrated anniversaries there. The staff knew me. The dining room was always busy. I chose it because it was public. Witnesses would be everywhere. "Dad, Sandra was planning to cook this weekend," Marcus said over the phone. "I insist." "Is this about the will?" "Yes." In the background, I heard Sandra ask what we were discussing. Marcus told her. Her voice immediately brightened. "Romano's sounds wonderful." The enthusiasm made my stomach turn. I arrived 20 minutes early. I asked for a table near the kitchen with a clear view of the bar. Old habits. Before an important meeting, always understand the room. Know the exits. Know who can see you. Know who can approach without warning. Marcus and Sandra entered together. Sandra wore a black dress and Eleanor's pearl earrings. I had given them to Marcus after the funeral. Seeing them on Sandra produced a feeling I could not name. She hugged me. "You look tired." "I haven't slept well." "You need someone checking on you more regularly." "I manage. For now." The words were delivered softly. Yet they sounded almost like a countdown. Our waitress introduced herself as Maria. She appeared to be in her mid-20s. Dark hair pulled into a ponytail. Tired eyes. A student, perhaps, working long shifts between classes. When she looked at Sandra, the tray in her hand tilted slightly. Recognition passed across her face. Sandra did not notice. I did. "What can I bring everyone to drink?" Maria asked. "A beer," Marcus said. "The house read for me," Sandra replied. Then she looked at me. "Alan should have the same." "I'll take sparkling water." Sandra's smile tightened. "I thought you liked red wine." "My medication doesn't agree with it." "1 glass won't hurt." "I'll stay with water." Maria glanced between us. "I'll bring the drinks." During dinner, Sandra returned repeatedly to my estate. "Have you spoken with Harold Brennan?" "My attorney and I have an appointment." "What exactly are you changing?" "I haven't decided." "Marcus should be involved." "It is my will." "Of course." Her smile returned. "We only want to make certain no one takes advantage of you while your health is unstable." The sentence stayed with me. She was already constructing the language. Unstable. Confused. Vulnerable. Words that could later be used to challenge any decision she disliked. Maria moved through the restaurant. Every few minutes, I caught her staring at our table. She looked frightened. Not curious. Frightened. I decided to test Sandra. "Maybe I will have some wine." Her entire face changed. "Wonderful." She raised one hand. "Maria, could you bring my father-in-law a glass of the house red?" Maria stopped. For 1 second, she seemed unable to move. Then she nodded and walked toward the bar. When she returned, her hand was trembling. She placed the wine in front of me. I lifted it. Sandra leaned forward almost imperceptibly. Her eyes fixed on the rim. Maria stepped beside me and began clearing plates. Her finger slipped a folded piece of paper into my jacket pocket. "Check your pocket," she whispered. Then, even more quietly, "Do not drink." My heart slammed against my ribs. But I kept my face calm. I lowered the glass. "I've changed my mind." Sandra's expression flickered. "Why?" "Better not to mix alcohol with medication. A sip won't hurt." I said no. The firmness surprised Marcus. Sandra forced a laugh. "Of course." My napkin fell. As I bent to collect it, I shifted the wine away from my place and moved the untouched spare glass toward me. Sandra immediately reached across the table. "You took mine by mistake." She switched the glasses back. Her hand moved too quickly. Her face had become pale. That reaction confirmed what Maria's warning had suggested. Something was wrong with the glass intended for me. No one drank it. I made certain of that. But I no longer doubted that my life was in danger. I excused myself and entered the restroom. Inside a stall, I unfolded Maria's note. The handwriting was hurried. "Do not eat or drink anything she gives you. Meet me behind the restaurant in 10 minutes. Come alone." My hands shook so badly that the paper rattled. A stranger had noticed the danger my own son could not see. I returned to the table. Sandra was discussing a summer trip. "You should come to the Hamptons with us," Marcus said. "The ocean air might help." "We'll see." Sandra pushed the wine toward me. "You hardly touched it." "I'm not drinking." "Alan, we paid for it." "Then you drink it." Her hand stopped. "I already have one." "Exactly." For a moment, we stared at each other. She knew I was testing her. I knew she was afraid of that glass. Neither of us could say it openly. "I'm tired," I announced. Marcus paid the bill despite my objections. We walked into the parking lot. I hugged my son. When Sandra embraced me, her mouth came close to my ear. "You should be more careful with your health." The words sounded like advice. They felt like a threat. I watched their car disappear. Then I waited 5 minutes and walked behind the restaurant. Maria stood near the delivery entrance smoking a cigarette. Her hands shook. She dropped the cigarette and crushed it beneath her shoe when she saw me. "Mr. Holloway? How do you know my name?" She looked toward the alley. "Because I know Sandra." My body became cold. "How?" Maria swallowed. "She's my cousin." For a moment, the sound of traffic disappeared. I reached for the brick wall beside me. "Your cousin?" "Her real name is Sandra Elena Vargas. She uses Holloway. She uses whatever name helps her become whoever she needs to be." Maria wiped beneath one eye. "We haven't spoken in years. She doesn't know I work here." "What do you know?" "Enough to know you are in danger." She lowered her voice. "Sandra was married before Marcus. I know she had one previous marriage." "She told you one." A sick feeling moved through me. "What happened to him?" "He died." "How?" "They called it a heart attack." "Was it?" Maria's eyes filled. "His family never believed it." She told me about Robert Vega. He had been 45 and apparently healthy. During the weeks before his death, he suffered unexplained nausea, fatigue, confusion, and irregular heart symptoms. The same symptoms I had been experiencing. Sandra took care of him. She prepared his meals. She organized his medications. She inherited his house and a large insurance policy. By the time Robert's brother began asking questions, Sandra had sold the property and disappeared. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I watched her tonight." Maria's voice cracked. "She watched your glass the way she watched Robert's medicine." "You were there?" "I visited them near the end." She took a breath. "I was younger. I told myself I was imagining things. After he died, Sandra warned me that no one would believe a waitress from a troubled family over a grieving widow." "Did she threaten you?" "She didn't need to." Maria looked ashamed. "I stayed quiet." "You were afraid. And someone may have died because of it." Her tears finally fell. "I cannot make that mistake again." She gave me a business card. "Jennifer Walsh. A nurse who consulted with poison control specialists." "Jennifer is my friend," Maria said. "She will know what tests you need." I took the card. "You may have saved my life." Maria shook her head. "Not yet. Sandra is patient. If she thinks you are suspicious, she may become dangerous very quickly." As I drove home, I kept seeing Sandra's face. The concern. The tenderness. The gentle hands preparing tea. Every act of care now looked different. She had not married Marcus because she loved him. She had selected him because he was the only heir to a wealthy father. My son was not her husband. He was a bridge. And I was the obstacle standing at the other end. The following morning, I called Jennifer Walsh. She agreed to meet that afternoon. "Bring everything Sandra gave you," she instructed. "Supplements, tea, medication containers, anything she could have touched." I gathered the vitamin bottle. The herbal tea. A bottle of antacid Sandra insisted I keep beside the bed. The health tonic she brought 2 weeks earlier. Seeing the collection on my kitchen table filled me with dread. I had swallowed those products without hesitation. I trusted her because she was family. Jennifer's office was located inside a medical building downtown. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and gray beginning to show in her dark hair. She listened without interrupting. Then she examined the containers. "Your symptoms could be produced by several substances," she said. "Some are difficult to detect because they resemble ordinary cardiac or neurological illness. Can you determine whether anything was added? I can perform preliminary screening. A certified laboratory will be needed for evidence." She carried the vitamins into another room. 20 minutes later, she returned with a grim expression. "Mr. Holloway, these have been tampered with." My stomach dropped. "What did you find?" "Traces of a powerful prescription heart medication that should not be present in a vitamin." "What would it do?" "In inappropriate amounts, it can produce the symptoms you described and eventually cause a fatal cardiac event." The room felt smaller. "How long?" "That depends on exposure. Based on your symptoms, someone may have been giving you repeated low amounts to make the decline appear natural." Jennifer did not answer immediately. "Yes." The confirmation struck harder than suspicion. Sandra had been poisoning me. Not during a single moment of anger. Not impulsively. Slowly. Methodically. She had watched me become weak and confused. Then she returned with another bowl of soup and asked whether I felt any better. How close was I? Jennifer's eyes softened. "Close enough that you should see a physician immediately." I thanked her. As I walked toward my car, Marcus called. "Dad, Sandra asked me to check on you." I gripped the phone. "She said you looked exhausted last night?" "I'm feeling better." "That's good. She wanted to bring homemade soup this afternoon." "More poison delivered with a smile." "I'm not hungry." "She's worried." "I'll be fine." "Dad, she really cares about you." The pain in my chest had nothing to do with medication. My son truly believed that. He believed the woman poisoning his father was the most caring person in his life. "I know you love her," I said. "Of course I do. Remember that I love you, too." Marcus laughed uneasily. "You're sounding dramatic." "Maybe." I ended the call before my voice betrayed me. That evening, I contacted my attorney, Harold Brannon. He had handled my personal and business affairs for 15 years. "I need an emergency meeting." "What happened?" "I cannot explain by phone." We met Monday morning. I changed my will. The previous version left the company, properties, investments, and most of my savings to Marcus. The new version established trusts and charitable gifts. Marcus would receive financial security. Sandra would receive nothing. Not $1. Harold removed his glasses. "This is a substantial change. Family circumstances have changed." "Is Marcus aware?" "No." "Should I be concerned about coercion?" "Yes," I said. "But not against me." I told him enough to make him understand the danger. He arranged for the new will to be witnessed and secured immediately. Then I met Detective Ray Collins. Maria had known him since high school. He listened as Jennifer explained the preliminary findings. "Poisoning cases are difficult," he said. "We need evidence linking Sandra directly to the substance." She gave me the vitamins. She can claim the bottle was contaminated elsewhere. She has access to my house. That helps. She keeps a spare key. Collins exchanged a look with another officer. "If we can record her admitting that she altered your medication or food, we may have enough for a warrant." "What if she realizes I know?" She may try to accelerate her plan. The detective's honesty frightened me. But pretending ignorance would not protect me. Sandra had already decided I needed to die. The only question was whether she would succeed before we could prove it. That afternoon, Sandra called me. Her voice was sweet. "Alan, I hope you don't mind." "Not at all. Marcus said you refused my soup." I was feeling better. "I'm glad." The disappointment beneath her words was almost invisible. "I've been thinking," she continued. "Maybe I should visit on a schedule." "A schedule?" "To make sure you eat, take your medication, and don't become confused." "I'm not confused." "Of course not." Her tone suggested the opposite. "With the changes you mentioned making to your will, it's important that you're not influenced by people who don't have your best interests at heart." My grip tightened around the phone. "How did you know I'm changing it?" A pause. "You told us at dinner." I said I was considering changes. "That's what I meant." She recovered quickly. "Promise you'll discuss any major decision with Marcus and me. Family should be involved." "Exactly." Her voice brightened. "I'll visit tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring that herbal tea you like." After the call, I contacted Detective Collins. We developed a plan. Officers would monitor the house from nearby. I would wear a recording device. My task was simple. Encourage Sandra to discuss the substances she had given me. Do not consume anything. Do not reveal what we knew. Signal the officers if I felt threatened. That night, sleep never came. I sat in Eleanor's old chair and stared at the dark windows. I thought about Marcus. He believed he had married his soulmate. He believed Sandra had brought love and stability into his life. The truth would destroy that belief. Part of me wanted to keep protecting him. Then I remembered that protecting an illusion would place both of us in danger. Sandra had selected him deliberately. If I died, she would inherit through him. If he discovered her deception, what would prevent her from treating him the way she treated me? Saving my life might also save his. At exactly 2 the following afternoon, Sandra arrived carrying groceries. A tiny recording device rested beneath my shirt. A panic button disguised as a pen lay in my pocket. Officers waited across the street inside my neighbor's house. Sandra kissed my cheek. "You look much better." "I feel better." Her eyes sharpened. "That's wonderful." She carried the bags into the kitchen. Tea. Crackers. Soup. A dark bottle labeled as an energy supplement. "What is that?" "A natural tonic." "Who recommended it?" "I researched it." She began heating water. Her movements were confident and familiar. She had performed this routine many times. While she prepared the tea, she spoke about the future. "Marcus and I may start a family." "That's exciting." "Children are expensive." "You'll manage." "We hope we won't need to worry about money much longer." She glanced at me. "Marcus will eventually inherit the company." "Will he?" "That was always your plan." "Plans change." Her spoon stopped moving inside the cup. "Why would this one change?" "I'm still deciding." She handed me the tea. "This will help clear your mind." I accepted the mug but did not drink. "Sandra, where did you learn so much about caring for sick people?" "My grandmother believed in natural medicine. The vitamins you brought me made me feel worse." Her hand tightened around her own cup. "That can happen." "Why?" "The body sometimes becomes sicker before it heals." "Nausea?" "Yes." "Confusion?" "Yes." "Irregular heartbeat?" She hesitated. "Possibly." "You seem very familiar with my symptoms." "I've watched you suffer." "You watched closely." The warmth left her eyes. "What are you implying? Did you add anything to the vitamins?" Her smile faltered. "That's a strange question." "Did you?" "Why would I?" "I don't know." I held the untouched tea. "But every time I consume something you bring, I become ill." Sandra stood. She carried her cup to the sink. Her back remained toward me. "You're becoming paranoid." "Am I?" "Confusion and suspicion are common in men with your condition." "What condition?" She turned. For 1 second, the mask disappeared completely. Her face was cold. "Predatory. The condition of getting old." The words were quiet, almost contemptuous. Then she smiled again. You should be grateful that someone still cares enough to help. What if the person pretending to help is causing the illness? Sandra stared at me. Her eyes moved across my shirt, the room, and the windows. She was calculating how much I knew. That would be a terrible accusation. It would. Especially without proof. The threat was unmistakable. Who would believe a sick, confused widower over the daughter-in-law who has spent months taking care of him? There it was. She had been constructing my mental decline as carefully as she constructed my physical one. If I accused her, she would call me unstable. If I died, she would say my final claims were meaningless. I lifted the tea. Sandra watched. I allowed the rim to touch my lips without drinking. Then I set it down. I'm not thirsty. The tea works best hot. I'll save it. Drink it now. Her command came too sharply. We both heard it. Sandra forced another smile. I went to a lot of trouble to make it exactly what you need. The sentence was the closest thing to a confession she offered. Then she gathered her bag. Don't forget to drink it. She gripped my arm near the door. Her fingers dug into my skin. I would hate for your condition to become worse. After she left, the officers entered. Detective Collins listened to the recording twice. It's strong circumstantial evidence. But not enough. A defense attorney will say she was concerned about your health. She threatened me. Indirectly. My frustration rose. So she walks away? Not yet. An officer collected the tea, supplements, and containers for laboratory testing. Collins looked at me. We need her history. Maria mentioned Robert Vega. We start there. Maria arranged a call with Robert's brother, Miguel. He had spent 3 years collecting records no one wanted to examine. Medical reports. Insurance policies. Bank statements. Photographs taken after the funeral. Robert had experienced the same progression I had. Fatigue. Nausea. Confusion. Heart irregularities. Sandra prepared his food and handled his medicine. After his death, she cleaned out the medicine cabinet before his family arrived. She inherited the house and $200,000 in insurance. Then Collins uncovered something worse. Sandra had not been married twice. She had been married 6 times. 2 marriages ended in divorce after the husbands became suspicious. 4 ended in funerals. Each dead husband had experienced a period of unexplained illness. Each left Sandra money. The combined value exceeded $8 million. She was not an opportunist who made one terrible choice. She was a predator who had refined her method across a decade. How did she find Marcus? I asked. Collins opened another file. She took a job at the coffee shop near his office 6 months before they began dating. So? The manager remembers her asking about regular customers. My stomach turned. She selected him. She learned his schedule, his family background, and his connection to your company. Their first meeting had not been accidental. Their romance had not been fate. Sandra had identified my son as the single heir to a wealthy widower and built herself into the woman he had always wanted. Marcus loved an illusion created specifically to trap him. We're setting up another operation, Collins said. This time, she needs to believe you are much worse. What do you want me to do? Call her. Tell her you are frightened, dizzy, and experiencing chest pain. She'll tell me to call a doctor. No. Collins's expression was grim. If her pattern matches the other cases, she will see an opportunity to finish this. The words settled heavily between us. Finish this. My murder had become a timeline. A task Sandra needed to complete before suspicion reached Marcus. Before calling her, I called my son. I needed to hear his voice. Hey, Dad. How are you? Busy. Sandra's worried about you. I'm sure she is. Dad, why do you keep saying it like that? I closed my eyes. Marcus, I want you to remember something. What? I love you. I know. Everything I have ever done was intended to protect you. His voice became nervous. What's going on? Nothing you need to handle tonight. Are you sick? I'm going to be all right. Dad. I love you. I ended the call before I told him everything. Then I called Sandra. I made my breathing uneven. I allowed my voice to shake. Sandra, I'm sorry to bother you. What's wrong? I feel terrible. What symptoms? Nausea. Dizziness. Chest pain. A pause. Did you drink the tea? Yes. The lie came easily. Did you take the vitamins? Yes. Another pause. She was calculating. I may have something stronger. I'm frightened. Don't call anyone. Her response came too quickly. Why? We don't want to panic, Marcus. What should I do? I have a concentrated tonic. It will calm your heart and help you rest. Can you bring it? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thank you. That's what family is for. Satisfaction entered her voice. She believed the end had arrived. Officers took positions inside the house. 2 waited upstairs. Another remained near the rear entrance. Detective Collins listened from the basement through the recording equipment. I sat in the living room alone. Eleanor's photograph stood above the fireplace. I looked at her smile. I could use some help, I whispered. 23 minutes later, someone knocked. Sandra stood outside holding a small leather bag. Her face displayed exaggerated concern. Oh, Alan. She hurried inside. You look awful. I feel worse. Sit down. She took control immediately. She opened the bag and removed an unmarked dark bottle. What is that? The concentrated tonic. There's no label. It was specially prepared. By whom? A specialist. What's in it? Natural ingredients. Her answers were smooth. Rehearsed. She unscrewed the cap. A bitter medicinal smell reached me. You need to drink all of it. All? Yes. That seems like a lot. It's the only thing strong enough to help you now. She handed me the bottle. Her eyes were bright. Not with concern. Anticipation. I held my own death in my hands. Are you certain it's safe? Absolutely. What if it reacts with my medication? It won't. How do you know? Because I know exactly what you've been taking. The sentence slipped out. Sandra realized it immediately. Her face changed. You organized my medication, I said. I was helping. You replaced the vitamins. Her eyes narrowed. Drink the tonic, Alan. What did you put in them? You're confused. What did you put in my tea? Stop asking questions. Her voice hardened. You wanted the inheritance. Sandra stared at me. Then, slowly, she smiled. The caring daughter-in-law disappeared. What remained was cold and empty. You should have drunk the wine. My entire body went still. At Romano's? That waitress ruined everything. The confession entered the microphones hidden throughout the house. How long have you been doing this? Sandra stepped closer. Long enough. Did you marry Marcus because of me? She laughed quietly. Marcus was easy. The words hurt more than anything she had done to me. He wanted someone beautiful to make him feel important. I gave him exactly what he wanted. He loves you. That was useful. And when I died, you left him everything. How did you know? People leave papers in predictable places. My old will. She had entered my study using the spare key and photographed it. You poisoned 4 other men. The smile vanished. Who told you that? Robert's brother remembers. Sandra lunged toward me. Drink it. She grabbed my wrist and tried to force the bottle upward. I pressed the panic button. Doors opened simultaneously. Please. Let go of him. Sandra spun around. The bottle slipped from my hand and struck the hardwood floor. Dark liquid spread across the boards. Detective Collins entered with his weapon lowered but ready. 2 officers seized Sandra's arms. For several seconds, she appeared unable to understand what was happening. This is a mistake. Her voice became sweet again. I was helping him. You're under arrest for attempted murder, Collins said. Alan, tell them. She looked at me with wide, wounded eyes. Tell them I was taking care of you. The handcuffs closed. The mask fell. Pure hatred transformed her face. You think you won? Her voice became low and vicious. Marcus will hate you. Maybe. You destroyed his marriage. No. I looked at the bottle on the floor. At least now he'll live long enough to recover from it. The officers led her away. For the first time in months, I filled my lungs without wondering whether my heart would stop. The poison was out of my house. The woman who brought it was in custody. But the hardest part remained. I had to tell my son that his wife never loved him. Marcus arrived the next morning. His face was gray from lack of sleep. "Where is Sandra?" "Sit down." "Dad, where is my wife?" "She's in custody." He stared at me. "For what?" "Attempted murder." The silence that followed was unbearable. Marcus laughed once. A sharp, disbelieving sound. "Whose murder?" "Mine." He stepped backward. "No. Marcus. No." He shook his head. "This is some kind of mistake." I told him about the symptoms. The vitamins. Jennifer's tests. Maria's warning. Robert Vega. The unmarked bottle. The confession recorded inside the house. Marcus listened without sitting. With each detail, his face became paler. "You're saying Sandra married me to get your money?" "I'm sorry. She loves me. I heard her describe you as useful." The words broke something inside him. He dropped into the chair. His hands covered his face. "How much?" "What?" "How much was she expecting?" "Approximately $3 million, the company interests, and the properties." Marcus lowered his hands. "She married me for $3 million. I believe she selected you because of the inheritance." "Everything was fake?" "I don't know whether every moment was fake." I sat beside him. "But the relationship began as part of a plan." Marcus began crying. Not loudly. The tears simply moved down his face. "I brought her into your house. You didn't know. I gave her the key. You believed your wife. I told you she cared about you. She fooled both of us. How could I not see it? Because she made herself into the person you wanted to see." He looked toward the floor. "I loved her. I know. That was what made Sandra's betrayal so destructive. She had not merely tried to kill me. She had weaponized my son's love." Detective Collins arrived later that afternoon. The liquid from Sandra's bottle had been tested. It contained a concentrated combination of dangerous cardiac medications. Enough to cause rapid heart failure. "If you had swallowed it," Collins said, "you likely would have died before an ambulance arrived." Marcus closed his eyes. Miguel Vega's evidence connected Sandra to Robert's death. Police departments in other states began reopening the cases of her previous husbands. Financial investigators discovered the pattern. Sandra researched each man's property, insurance, and family structure before committing herself to the relationship. She isolated them. Took control of food and medication. Encouraged others to view them as confused or unstable. Then their health declined. 4 men were dead. 2 others had escaped through divorce after becoming suspicious. Marcus sat motionless while Collins explained. "How many people did she kill?" "We may never know." The answer left the room colder. Sandra was not simply the woman Marcus had married. She was a predator who had moved from family to family, leaving funerals behind her. At least this time, there would not be another funeral. Sandra's trial began 8 months later. By then, my physical health had improved dramatically. The nausea disappeared. My memory cleared. My heartbeat returned to normal. Doctors confirmed that the prolonged exposure had weakened me but had not caused permanent damage. I testified for 2 days. I described the family dinner. The wine. Maria's warning. The vitamins. The tea. Sandra's final visit. The prosecution played her recorded words. "You should have drunk the wine." The courtroom became silent. Miguel testified about Robert. Maria testified about Sandra's history and the fear that had kept her silent. Jennifer explained the laboratory evidence. Forensic accountants displayed Sandra's pattern across 6 marriages. Insurance payouts. Property transfers. New identities. Research into each victim's wealth. The evidence formed a trail too clear to ignore. Sandra showed no remorse. She sat beside her attorneys in conservative clothing with her hair pulled back. She portrayed herself as a misunderstood caregiver. She claimed the men in her life had been controlling. She said I poisoned myself because I disapproved of Marcus's marriage. Her attorney suggested Maria was motivated by family jealousy. They attempted to portray every dead husband as a coincidence. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty of attempted murder. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of conspiracy and financial exploitation. Additional investigations connected her to other deaths. The judge sentenced Sandra Elena Vargas to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As officers led her away, she turned toward me. There was no affectionate smile. No concern. Only hatred. Her lips formed silent words. "You destroyed your son." She was wrong. The truth wounded Marcus. But a wound can heal. Death cannot. I had saved my son from spending the rest of his life beside a woman who viewed love as a hunting technique. The months after the trial were difficult. Marcus entered therapy. He struggled with shame and depression. He questioned every memory from his marriage. Their first date. The proposal. The wedding. Every promise Sandra made. He wondered whether she ever felt anything real. Some questions have no answer that brings comfort. One evening, we sat on my back porch watching the sun disappear behind Eleanor's garden. "I don't think I'll ever trust my judgment again," he said. "You trusted someone skilled at deception. That doesn't make me feel better. It should make you kinder to yourself." He looked at me. "How did you see it when I couldn't?" "I didn't see it at first." "You became suspicious." "Because she was hurting me directly." I thought for a moment. "And because something about her care never felt like care." "What did it feel like?" "Control." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what our marriage felt like near the end." He told me Sandra chose his clothes, managed his friendships, discouraged private conversations between us, monitored his spending while hiding her own. What Marcus once considered devotion had gradually become isolation. Sandra did not merely prepare to murder me. She had been constructing a cage around my son. A year after the conviction, Marcus met Rebecca Cole. She taught 4th grade. She was warm, patient, and completely uninterested in performing perfection. When Marcus brought her to dinner, she arrived 15 minutes late because one of her students had missed the bus. Her hair was damp from rain. She apologized, laughed at herself, and helped carry dishes to the table without being asked. Sandra had always seemed polished. Rebecca seemed real. Marcus watched her with a cautious tenderness. "She knows everything," he told me later. "About Sandra?" "Yes. And she stayed. She said being deceived doesn't make me defective. Smart woman. She doesn't try to impress me. Maybe she trusts you enough to be herself." Watching Marcus slowly learn to love again became one of the greatest rewards of surviving. Sandra tried to destroy our family. Instead, the truth forced us to become more honest with one another. My relationship with Marcus deepened. We spoke openly. We stopped assuming love could replace difficult conversations. We learned that silence creates space where manipulation can grow. I changed my estate plan again. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. Marcus would receive enough to be secure. The rest would support organizations assisting victims of domestic abuse, financial exploitation, and suspicious family deaths. I established the Eleanor Holloway Foundation. Eleanor believed justice should not depend on whether a family could afford an attorney or investigator. The foundation helped people obtain forensic reviews, legal representation, and independent medical analysis. Miguel Vega became one of our first advisors. For years, no one listened when he said his brother had been murdered. Now he helped other families ask the questions he once had to ask alone. 2 years after Sandra's conviction, I received a letter from Oregon. A woman's husband had died after a period of unexplained illness. His new wife inherited everything. The symptoms resembled mine. I forwarded the information to Collins, who had been promoted to lieutenant. Within 6 months, investigators uncovered enough evidence to make an arrest. That case led to others. Police agencies began recognizing the pattern. Sandra's methods, once hidden behind ordinary medical explanations, became part of a new investigative protocol. They called it the Vargas Protocol. I disliked hearing her name attached to anything useful. But Collins explained it differently. "Her name will no longer represent what she got away with," he said. "It will represent the reason others are caught." That changed how I saw it. The evil she created had been turned into a warning system. Other families would be protected because Maria chose not to remain silent. Almost 3 years after the dinner at Romano's, I sat in Eleanor's garden reading a letter from Marcus. He and Rebecca were engaged. They wanted to marry at my house beneath the old oak tree. Marcus had written, "I want to begin our marriage in the place where truth protected our family. I want Rebecca to see that this home is not defined by what Sandra tried to do. It is defined by the people who refuse to let her succeed." I read the words twice. Then I looked across the garden Eleanor planted 20 years earlier. I imagined her standing beneath the oak tree. She would have loved Rebecca. She would have cried through the ceremony and denied crying afterward. For the first time, the future no longer looked like something Sandra had nearly stolen. It looked like something still waiting for us. The wedding took place in late spring. White flowers lined the garden path. Lights hung from the oak branches. Rebecca walked toward Marcus wearing a simple dress and the expression of someone completely certain about the promise she was making. There were no hidden agendas. No performance. No inheritance calculations concealed beneath affectionate words. Only two people choosing truth. During the reception, retired Lieutenant Collins stood beside me. "You look healthy," he said. "I feel healthy. You know Sandra's conviction changed procedures nationwide. So you've told me. Suspicious deaths involving sudden marriages and unexplained illness now receive a different level of review. Good. It has already saved lives." I watched Marcus dance with Rebecca. Then something useful came out of it. Collins nodded. "Something useful came out of you surviving." The sentence stayed with me. For a long time, I thought survival simply meant Sandra failed to kill me. It meant more. Survival meant my son had time to heal. It meant Rebecca entered our lives. It meant families in other states found answers. It meant Maria no longer carried the guilt of remaining silent. It meant Eleanor's name became connected to justice and protection. Survival was not merely continuing to breathe. It was deciding what to build with the life someone tried to take. After the final guests left, I stood alone beneath the oak tree. Fairy lights glowed above me. Laughter drifted from the driveway as Marcus and Rebecca departed. The garden smelled of flowers and warm earth. Sandra would spend the rest of her life behind prison walls. My son was alive. I was alive. The family she tried to use had survived her. Justice had not been easy. It had not been quick. But it was complete. I entered the house and stopped beside Eleanor's photograph. "You would have liked tonight," I said. The rooms were quiet. But the silence no longer frightened me. For months, I had lived beneath the shadow of a death I could not see approaching. Now the house held something different. Safety. Memory. A future. That night, I slept without waking. No dizziness. No nausea. No fear that the person smiling across my table had placed death inside my glass. Only peace. There is one lesson I carried from everything that happened. Danger does not always arrive looking dangerous. Sometimes it arrives with groceries. Sometimes it remembers your medication schedule. Sometimes it calls you dad and insists it only wants what is best for you. Pay attention when care begins to feel like control. Pay attention when someone isolates you from the people who know you best. Pay attention when your body tells you something is wrong, even when everyone else insists the problem is in your mind. Most importantly, do not ignore the quiet person who risks everything to warn you. Maria Santos had no obligation to save me. She was young. She was frightened. She had every reason to stay silent. Instead, she placed a note in an old man's pocket and changed the future of an entire family. Courage is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is 4 hurried words written on a piece of paper. "Do not drink that wine." Sandra believed she had chosen an easy victim. A lonely widower. A father who loved his son too much to cause conflict. A man weakened by months of illness. She mistook sickness for helplessness. She mistook trust for stupidity. She mistook love for a weakness she could exploit. What she failed to understand was that I had spent my entire life building structures designed to survive pressure. When I finally saw the crack inside my own family, I did what I had always done. I stopped pretending it was harmless. I exposed what was hidden. And I rebuilt on stronger ground. Sandra tried to take my life. Instead, she forced me to understand its value. She tried to steal my son's future. Instead, the truth gave him another chance to build one. She tried to turn my home into a crime scene. Instead, it became the place where Marcus and Rebecca began an honest marriage. She tried to leave behind nothing but grief. Instead, her capture helped other families uncover the truth. Evil did not win. Not because good people were stronger from the beginning. Good won because frightened people finally spoke. Because evidence was preserved. Because a son accepted a truth that shattered him rather than defending a comforting lie. Because an old man decided that being afraid was not the same as being defeated. When I think back to that restaurant, I still see Sandra watching the glass. I still feel the folded note inside my pocket. I still remember Maria's trembling voice. I often wonder what would have happened if she had remained silent for 10 more seconds. Perhaps I would have taken the sip. Perhaps Marcus would have buried me and comforted the woman responsible. Perhaps Sandra would have inherited everything and eventually turned her attention toward him. One small act prevented all of it. That is why I no longer dismiss instinct. And I no longer ignore people whose voices shake when they tell the truth. Sometimes the shaking voice is the bravest one in the room. My life did not end at that dinner table. It began again. I recovered my health. I recovered my relationship with my son. I found a purpose larger than the company I built. And I learned that the strongest legacy is not the money written into a will. It is the protection you leave behind for people who may never know your name. When I finally rewrote my will for the last time, I did not feel afraid of death. I felt certain about life. Marcus and Rebecca would be secure. The Eleanor Holloway Foundation would continue its work. Families ignored by investigators would receive help. Victims dismissed as confused would be heard. And somewhere, perhaps in another restaurant, another hospital, or another quiet house, someone would recognize the warning signs before it was too late. That was the legacy Sandra never understood. She measured lives in property, insurance, and bank accounts. She believed wealth was the only thing worth inheriting. But the greatest things Eleanor left me had no price. Courage. Decency. The responsibility to protect family without pretending family can do no wrong. Sandra wanted my fortune. What survived her was something much greater. Truth. And once the truth entered that house, her plans ended forever.